probably talked about this before. Why did you bother including the connecting rights of way when that takes up acreage? And I think I understand that you don't need to have physical contiguity within a URA, or am I wrong? Is that not the case?
My legal counsel has always advised that you do have to have contiguity. So that's why we have contiguity. So
okay.
There are some urban renewal areas across the state who don't. When I've talked with bond counsel, so I work with Gulgan Merzero a lot, and she advises that if you want to place bonds with their firms, you have to have contiguity. And I've had other bond counsel give me the same advice.
Well, that's good advice. So even if it's a little bit of a gray area, if bond counsel says it strengthens the bond offering, that's reason enough. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, John. So I'm going to go through and just kind of quickly identify the location of these projects. The Oregon Tonkin Roundabout is number one right here. That's identified in a variety of our plans. And I believe it's also in the regional transportation plan. It's in our transportation system plan. So that's that project. And then 2 is Oregon Street improvements. So along that entire frontage. 3, 4, and 5 are all related to this property here, which we refer to as the tannery site. There's a regional water quality facility that we're in the process of designing and ultimately need to construct. There is tannery site cleanup, and then the potential public works facility relocation. As you recall, the existing public works facility is over here, and the vision of sort of the grand vision is relocating the public works facility over here on a sort of more accessible, industrially zoned piece of land, and then redeveloping this piece of property, which is zoned a combination of high density residential and I believe retail commercial, and in our Old Town area. So redeveloping that for a higher and better use. So that's 3, 4, and 5. 6, 7, 8, and 9 are all related to the Tonkin employment area, the infrastructure, the transportation infrastructure, water, sewer, and storm. And then moving over, project 10 is the Cedar Birkway extension or expansion from its current parameters at Handley to Elwert. 11 is referred to as Forest Creek Drive extension. There's a very little bit on either end that is in either constructed or in process of construction, and it would essentially be a parallel frontage road to Pacific Highway, just like Cedar Brook Way, probably a little less, a little smaller in terms of length. Project 12 is a under or overcrossing of Cedar Creek, of 99 for the Cedar Creek Trail. The money that we identified in the project list was for the undercrossing portion rather than the overcrossing, because that seems to be the direction that we are heading. Project 13 is a YMCA expansion, if that ends up on the list. 14 is the 99W pedestrian bridge connecting both sides, sort of landing right in front of where the high school is. 15 is the extension of Langer Farms Parkway, sort of across from the Home Depot, providing access to these parcels in here. 16 is just sort of the general, all these red lines, Sherwood broadband. 17 is a festival plaza / parking. The vision there is there's currently a lot that we own that is graveled, and the idea is to make it sort of most of the time a parking facility, but able to be flexed into a festival plaza when we have any, one of our many festival and events that we have in Sherwood. And then 18 isn't on the map, but it's just sort of the general administration of the project. Any questions on on those. I think we briefly talked about projects at a high level last time, but I think we're planning on getting into a little bit more detail in this. So any questions?
And Julie, just for clarification on the Oregon Street traffic circle, that's for a new traffic circle, not to upgrade or replace the existing traffic circle.
Yes, that is actually the Oregon Murdoch traffic circle, and this would be a
new
kind
one.
of envision it to be like a figure 8 type of thing. This would be an Oregon Tonkin roundabout. So yes, it is not an upgrade. It is a new roundabout, and it's complicated because it does need to work with the existing roundabout at Murdoch.
Chris
Right.
had her hand raised, I think, too.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I think all these projects sound great because, Julie, I've been working with you for years on these projects, and it would really be nice to get this infrastructure in place to leverage the other development. So I'm going to ask a devil's question in case somebody else asks you, and I can answer. Did you consider using any of this money for affordable housing? Because everybody's talking about affordable housing these days. And so I just thought I would help you answer by practicing telling me.
No, that's a great question. Honestly, and maybe Tim can speak to this too, but no, the focus of this urban renewal area is pretty much all in jobs areas where we want to really encourage and facilitate the creation of jobs and employment and economic development growth. So it wasn't envisioned to be anything other than that. But I guess I'd like to hear from others that might have better, different responses to that.
Yeah, I can pitch in on that a little bit. We didn't talk about it specifically in the context of the URA. I mean, part of the challenge with creating, it depends on type of affordable housing you're creating, right? If we're talking about the missing middle, this doesn't really apply. That's really about zoning and planning and working with the developers. If we're talking about low-income housing, we have a lot of challenges around that, providing that, mainly because we don't have the amenities that really make that work. We don't have mass transit coming into Sherwood. We don't have, it's not easy to get to job centers from Sherwood. And when you talk about people that need the low-income housing, their second highest cost in their line items of their monthly budget is transportation. So that's not to say we couldn't do something down the road if that changes, but it's if we're going, I think, in my opinion, is if we're going to do that, we want to make sure it works and it works right, and people can actually take advantage of it. So that's, if that helps, that's kind of
yeah. I'm totally sold on your logic of going after the jobs, particularly how much housing Sherwood already has. I just anticipate someone asking that question, given everyone's talking about affordable housing, and I just thought I'd raise it. Thanks.
And frankly, there's other mechanisms that if we really want to go after that, we can work with Metro. Really, Metro has a huge pile of money that they're throwing at affordable housing. But what they're really, the biggest thing a city can do to help a project like that is donate land, and so that would probably be the route that we would go down to solve a problem like that. But again, we want to make sure it works, and we don't want to make sure we don't build something that ends up being not affordable.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for practicing the answer with me.
So Julia,
you're on.
Sandra, are you still soliciting comments on the project list?
Yes.
Okay. So I love the idea of moving the public works facility. It definitely makes sense that you have a better use in that prime spot of the downtown. I do know that our board would probably be troubled by the funding of the public works facility, the funding of the YMCA expansion, the pedestrian bridge, and the water quality facility, because it would be hard for them to understand how that's going to invite the private investment. By contrast, your transportation projects, all that makes really excellent sense. And I think they would wonder too about using municipal bonds for those public works facility and the YMCA expansion, when you can get better borrowing rates, there's ultimately a lower cost to the taxpayers. So I think they would be a little concerned about foregoing revenue for those public projects that don't prove to invite the private investment.
Julia?
I'm not sure who's speaking.
That's Bob. Sorry. Here, my hand's up.
Okay.
Can I comment on the stormwater facility concept there as a background info for that?
Sure.
Okay, most developments are going to have to do water quality treatment on their site if they don't have a regional facility to deal that would take that. That chews up a lot of developable land. And if you're looking at businesses that are trying to maximize space on the property rather than trying to go through a regulatory agency requirement for providing for that water quality treatment, the stormwater system for a regional purpose actually benefits a wider area and benefits business right at the core value, which is maximizing their investment in that lot. So generally speaking, I would say along with transportation has to deal with stormwater. They're tied together, and they both benefit businesses in a direct way. And the more efficiently we can do both of them, the better off businesses will be.
All right. Thank you. I am sorry. I'm just sort of struggling with this presentation. What are you guys seeing right now?
We're seeing the project,
Awesome.
project map.
Okay. Yeah, I accidentally muted myself and then I lost my mute, so I couldn't figure out how to unmute myself, and I don't know what you guys are seeing. So
Julia, I'm seeing pictures from your summer vacation. Is that right?
you are not. I haven't taken a summer vacation, so I know that's fake.
It's from the 7th grade, I think.
So now I'm a little bit better oriented, so sorry. Other comments on the project or questions about the projects that we're talking about?
I would add that this is I think the best way to think about a URA is it's a mechanism for funding projects. It doesn't necessarily specifically identify what projects we're going to do, but obviously we want to kind of have an idea of what that list is and have vetted projects and a purpose for doing it. I think this was probably covered in the first meeting, but just because it's on the list doesn't mean it happens, right? But this is our list that we kind of brainstormed, and I shouldn't say brainstorm. A lot of these have been in our CIP for a long time, and we've been looking for mechanisms to fund it. But Cassandra, your comments about making sure that the dollars are going to benefit business and commercial development, so it can lift the that continue to lift the value in the property taxes at the same time, that's heard loud and clear. I totally get that, and it's also important to us because it will fail if we don't do that.
All right. Any other questions, comments, observations?
There's a hand up. CK.
This is Corey.
Okay.
Oh, great.
So just to that point Tim was making and that Cassandra made, there is something to be said about, some of those projects that you listed, add to the allure of people coming and living in Sherwood, which, is a big part of, when companies look at locations, they look at, how attractive is it to potential employees, to live there. And I know one of the goals of the city is to have more people that live in Sherwood, work in Sherwood. And so, I think there is something to be said about a few of those that Cassandra mentioned that would add that element that, would enhance the attractability of families coming and living, that would be attractive to businesses looking to relocate or build.
So it's a balance.
Yeah, great. I mean, thank you for that comment. All right, I'm going to move on unless there are more. Maybe I'll move on.
Corey has his hand up.
Okay, go ahead. Or did
That was from my previous comment.
Okay.
I forgot to take it down.
Thank you. Oh, now my screen isn't wanting to. There. Can you guys see that? The total estimated costs?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So I think I'm turning it back over to Elaine.
So the sheet that Julia and Bruce sent out that estimated the total cost of the project list was about $99 million. The capacity in 30 years is $73,800,000. So to be able to put together a plan that works, we need to be able to look at that project list and cut out about $25.7 million from the project list. So it would be interesting, I think, from the committee to get your input on what things you think could be removed from the project list, or from the city to say funding sources could be reallocated maybe a little differently, using more money out of your other city funds to help change the leverage on some of those projects. But to what we need to understand is at this point, we need to get a project list that roughly equates to the $73.8 million list.
So I think I shared my screen again. I stopped sharing the presentation. Can you guys see the?
No, just your initials. So.
Wait, now something's good. Now
yeah, sorry, I don't know why
it was coming.
Is it coming?
It was.
Microsoft Teams.
So here's my excuse is that I told them I got a computer upgrade and everything is just a little bit different and it's kind of driving me crazy. I'm going to stop again. John, did you have a question?
Yeah, just to talk in response to Elaine's comment just now about having to get the dollar amount down. Just two thoughts. One is, what's the basis? And I would throw out a major basis of how to shortlist something like this is, what's the ROI? So if Project X is a $10 million right-of-way project that has a strong likelihood of generating $100 million of private investment, that's a good project. If something else is a nice to have, but doesn't really get a lot, and there's probably other guiding principles one might want to use in deciding how to winnow the list. The other thing is, Elaine anticipated my second observation is to leverage other public dollars for these transportation projects. And I'm wondering, Elaine, if we had a list of $73,800,000 worth of projects, but then said, oh, by the way, here's another whatever $20 million worth of projects, if we're able to secure MSTIP or other funding sources, can you do that, or is it intellectually challenging for an urban renewal plan to say, oh, here's other projects also?
That's challenging, and it's also one of the requirements of the statute is that your plan is financially feasible. And so you present a list that equates to your finances. And we all know, especially if it's a 30-year plan, that things change over time. And so the amendment section of an urban renewal plan allows you to add in other projects or change projects in the future. So if you're able then to leverage and get other funding and reduce costs, then you could add in one of these other projects that maybe gets removed now.
Okay.
You can't really put in a project list that unless you lower the numbers. Your project list needs to equate to your amount of dollars that you expect.
I bet you wouldn't like the plans I worked on at PDC then, because I was a little fast and loose.
Well, if Jeanette approved them, I guess you're probably okay.
Well, and our project list is already factored in that we're not paying for all of these things 100% with URA, and that's what the URA scenario 1 is showing. So if you look at our total project costs for all the projects we've listed, it's over 136 million, but we know that they're not all going to be 100% URA funded. And so some of them, for example, the Oregon Street improvements, we assumed maybe half URA funded and half through other sources like TDT or SDC. So we've kind of already factored in a little bit, but more the local pieces, if you will. So hopefully you guys are seeing what I think you're seeing, which is the project list with the cost estimate. And then the URA scenario 1 was, again, just kind of an internal staff crack at how to get that project list within the realm of what might be feasible. We're still a little high, and I think we're looking for input as we move forward on that. Is that correct, Elaine?
Yes.
And again, I can't see any hands, so if hands are raised.
I had a hand up, Julia, and I think you answered my question. I was wondering how you factored in TDT and your supplemental SDCs and other sort of utility SDCs that you charge, but it sounds like you've already taken those into account in terms of thinking out funding source funding, because that was my question too, to take something off that could be funded elsewhere. I kind of like John's idea about trying to figure out which one generates the most ROI, and yet I also think it's important to keep things on here that where there is no other funding source, like the trail underneath the creek under 99W that's so important for other measures. So sorry, I don't have a good answer for you in terms of how to cut this.
I have a feeling I know what Cassandra would comment on.
I'm trying. I just want to be a good listener. I don't want to be the one that's always, grouchy.
Well, if I could make a suggestion, I was going to hold back, but no one. Well, Cassandra, you made some suggestions already, but I think based on we did some polling earlier in the year on a potential YMCA bond, and there was strong support, but not strong enough, right? And so we've gone down some different paths with that. That's one potential one I think we could consider taking off the list at this point, and that's a big chunk of money too.
Thank you, counselor, for sparing me.
Had to come from the counselor.
Yeah, that's certainly a big, potentially low-hanging fruit that would get us very close to where we need to be if that came off the list.
That same polling looked at the Sunset pedestrian bridge, and there was very, very good support for that project in the community. And I think that gets to the livability factors, which need to be part of this. But YMCA, I think we could safely remove. But that's just my opinion. I'm just one member of this committee.
Other thoughts, input on projects that we absolutely need to make sure are 100% on this list, or projects that potentially should or could come off this list? So, and just FYI, I just did the math. So by taking the YMCA off at the 17,500,000, that gets us to about 81,609,000. So, and our parameters were, what was it?
70.
73.
Right.
So, we're not too far off if we take that one off of the project list.
Right. I think unless there's opposition to any other big project, that city staff can probably look at this and try to massage numbers to get us into a ballpark. So I think the real question at this point needs to be, is there anything else on here that people think need to just come off now? And there's two hands, Cassandra's and Chris's.
Oh,
Chris had her hands up first.
I took mine down.
There's a CK.
Then I,
Oh, that's not
That's
me.
Corey.
That's
Corey.
Corey.
Sorry, Corey.
I still am interested in the public works facility and wondering why municipal bonds wouldn't be used for that. Again, I very much appreciate moving the facility and using that developable parcel for something that's, really toward your vision for the downtown. But underwriting so much of the expense for a new public works facility doesn't, to me, meet the threshold. And again, going back to the municipal bonds, ultimately taxpayers will pay less money utilizing municipal bonds versus URA bonds for that kind of public project. So that would be my only other feedback.
So, and I think, so we did assume only half of the estimated cost would come from URA, but I believe, Craig, I think I saw you on in the meeting, and or Joe, can you chime in on kind of how the funding for a new public works facility, I believe it's going to be a combination of funds and not one full fund, but Craig, if you're there, can you chime in on that?
Sure. It would come from a variety of funding source. Something to take into consideration, you got all these projects on this list, as well as every other bit of development that's going to happen over the next 10 years. Your current public works facility cannot hold the staffing to maintain all this that you're planning on building. So that's one of the reasons why it's in here. But yes, it would come from a variety of utility funds as well. That's where you see the 21 down to the 10. That's what the difference would be. So if you continue to build stuff, you got to have the actual maintenance to be able to do that work.
So, Julia, this is Tim. Just a question on that. Maybe for Craig too. I mean, part of the bigger picture there, just for everybody, is that is an environmental cleanup site that we're proposing to move to, and because of that, we can get that property for virtually nothing, and we just have to pay the cost of the cleanup. And by moving Public Works over there, we clear up that other site for development. So my question is, when you were looking at the numbers, did you include the proceeds we potentially get from the sale of the other property in the thinking of that?
No, I don't believe that we did. Craig, that number was just for the construction, correct?
That's just for construction of a new facility.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking about when you net it out, when you think about the right-hand column, which is what would actually come out of the URA, because obviously if we redevelop that other site, there'd be proceeds from that.
Yeah, no, that wasn't factored into that. What's in the right-hand column? The right-hand column is just factoring in, again, high level, assuming half of it comes from the utilities and those types of sources, and then half of it from URA.
Can you scroll to that? I can't see it.
You can't see it? Can you see it now? The Public Works facility?
Oh, there it is. Found it.
Okay. Like, it's on my screen.
That's a big number, for
Yeah.
sure.
So Corey
I would,
and Justin have hands up.
I would agree that it is a big number. But I'll just throw a number out that what didn't cost for cleanup and everything else, Lake Oswego just built a new facility, and that was about a couple years ago, and it was around 15 to 16 was their estimate, and this is the closest estimate we have right now off the plans we have. So it is a big number.
Thanks, Craig. Corey, why don't you go ahead?
Hi, it's actually me. Hi guys, it's Rebecca. So going back to the YMCA expansion, can I get a little bit more information on what exactly was going to happen with that expansion before I decided I want it off the list?
Joe or Kristen, can you chime in on that?
Kristen, do you want to chime in, or would you like me to?
I didn't catch all of that. It was pretty echoey. So if you heard the question, go for it, Joe. If not, if you could repeat it.
Yeah, I'll start, and Councilor Rosner, please fill in any gaps that I'm missing. So we have plans. We've developed plans with an architect conceptually to expand the Y. That facility is 20 plus years old. It is certainly undersized for a community of 20,000 people now. It needs, at a minimum, a renovation at some point in the near future, but also we believe, and council believes, it needs to be expanded beyond the physical constraints of the current building, including a possible pool besides the 3-lane swimming pool that's in there now that was basically undersized from day one. So we have plans to expand that facility. It's always a challenge in figuring out how to fund it. And Councilor Rosner did reference a survey we did last year, and there was some support for a bond for that, but not overwhelming support. So that's kind of the long-term vision for that facility, Rebecca. Hopefully that answers at least the basics.
And if I could add, and we're not necessarily giving up on that either. We're looking at some other ways of making that happening by partnering with the YMCA at Willamette Columbia. There's conversations going on about that right now. There just wasn't we couldn't in good faith go out for a bond with what the polls were, the survey/poll showed.
In addition to the swimming, there'd be more exercise classes. I mean, it would be kind of a expanded brand new facility for the next 20 to 25 years. Like I said, the building's 20 plus years old and is showing some wear and tear. So.
Okay, Rebecca, did that answer your question? I can't hear you, so I'm assuming that it did.
Oh, she can't see you. Yes.
No, I can't see you either. All right, Justin.
Yeah, I was just curious on Lanier Farms Parkway extension. Can you give a little bit more info about that, and then the potential benefits of it? I know it's not a huge dollar item, but I'm just curious about it.
Yeah, that, boy, I wish I could easily, but I don't trust myself to be able to do it easily, get back to the map right now. But the properties on that side of 99, one in particular, is the access to that is very limited because of the 99 and Roy Rogers sort of access limitations. And so the idea is, and it's in our TSP, the idea is constructing a collector road that would continue and access those properties. There is some redevelopment potential of at least a few of those parcels that would allow more office type of uses, but they're really hindered right now because of access. And so doing that road would help facilitate that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Just trying to understand. So it sounds like that there is a pretty good cost benefit different or component to keeping that in the list, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, because we did look at, originally we looked at the 3 different areas, and that area by itself did not pencil out because I don't think there's, and Elaine, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm saying this incorrectly, but there wasn't enough of a benefit of just that area to get us to where we needed to be for the road. But I think when you put it all together, there is a cost benefit. Would you agree with that, Elaine?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, on its own, it was too small of an area to be able to support the amount of funds needed.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are able to tie it in with the other areas, that transportation network does facilitate the opportunity for new development. So that is it helps open up parcels to allow for new development.
Okay, yeah. It sounds like the properties that it gives access to or unlocks is pretty significant. So so that answers my question. Thank you.
Are there other questions? I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. I'm happy to go back to anything that you guys want to look at, but I want to be able to see all of you. Other questions or comments on the project list?
Can you do the same kind of a review for the Forest Creek Drive extension and the Langer Farms Parkway extension?
Yeah, let me actually go back to the presentation because I think it'll be easier to show you on the map. So the Forest Creek, can you guys all see that first?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The Forest Creek Drive extension is here. And that one, honestly, it might not have that same the same benefit that we were talking about with the Langer Farms Parkway extension. It is accessing commercial properties on 99, but it's it's a fairly small area. Yeah, I mean, we put that in there, but I'm not sure how much that one might be able to come out, I guess. And actually, I'm looking at our boundary map. I realize that those parcels aren't even in our boundary, so that might need to come off anyways.
To that point, the YMCA is not in the boundary either.
Yeah, that one we were kind of going back and forth. We didn't want to put it in the boundary unless that project was going to be on the list because of the acreage involved. And so when we were doing that initial analysis, we hadn't put that on there, but we could add that back in, as we could also add those properties as well along here. But I think we included the Forest Creek Drive because it was a parallel route to 99, similar to the Cedar Birkway, but it's a much less area. But on the other side, it's still a road that's going to cost money, and if those properties are going to develop, it's probably going to be really hard for them to develop without a little bit of financial assistance to get that road through.
But Julia, that road doesn't give access to parcels that don't currently have access to stay at least 99, correct?
That's correct, but ODOT will likely limit the access for those parcels.
Okay, so there would be some benefit to those parcels, but not quite as dramatic as compared to like the Langer Farms Parkway.
Right.
Okay.
So you wanted that one, and then did you need another analysis? Somebody needed another. Corey needed another analysis.
The Langer Farms Parkway extension.
So that was the one that we were talking about here. That's the 15 that would provide access into this area, and really, it's providing access. Can you guys see that? I don't know if you can see. Yeah, where the Home Depot is. Laser pointer. So here it would provide access for this parcel and really get into the back of this parcel. And then ultimately, there is some discussion about expanding the urban growth boundary, which I guess isn't really part of this specific discussion because that wouldn't be within the URA boundary, but potentially to bring in some additional land beyond where we're talking about right here. But just basically bringing the road in, I think it kind of comes like that.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking previously about the Cedar Birkway extension. So that would be one then, if you could clarify that one as well.
Yeah, Cedar Birkway, again, in the TSP, these property owners or these properties are, most of these are zoned commercial other than the Elks property that's zoned residential. And it's really, frankly, been fairly problematic because nobody knows where and how the road is going to go and where and how the road is going to be constructed. So having this in the URA might give us a little bit of money to help get that further along and open these parcels up. And it would connect ultimately. Right now there's a tiny little stub off of Handley. It will have to cross a ravine area and then pick up and basically come along here. And then where the roundabout at Elwert was just reconstructed, there's a leg of the roundabout that would be the easternmost or the westernmost extension of Cedar Birkway. And really what that will allow is development of that whole area. A lot of those properties in there have access restrictions. They sold their access rights to ODOT many years ago. There's a few deeded accesses, but this area is really limited without that alternate parallel access to 99.
Yeah, ODOT doesn't want this section of 99 to turn into another Tiger.
Exactly.
Right.
And not only do they not want it, they won't let it. They've purchased restrictions essentially that won't allow it to be like Tigered, and so that is good on one hand, but it also makes it difficult to develop some properties on the other.
Does Christina still have her hand
Yeah,
raised?
I just raised my hand because I was going to jump in on that ODOT access thing, because I think, you know, it may be a message point for the community as well to know that 99W is going to flow through there without all those extra driveways, because we've seen 99W so many access points, and it's such a big deal for every development. So having these parallel roads, it really frees it up and supports, you know, maintains the use of the highway. So I think it makes sense from a circulation access standpoint.
Hey, Elaine, I have a question for you. I just realized, because I was stuck on that, the Forest Creek Drive and why that isn't in the boundary, as well as the why. And I just realized that I think, so as a reminder to everybody, we're only allowed to have so much acreage in the URA because we have an existing URA and there's limits. And so we had to pull stuff out of what we originally were wanting to do, with the expectation that once our existing URA goes away, we could potentially do some modest expansions to include those properties back. And I believe that the Y and that area of Forest Creek Drive was taken out with the expectation that it comes back. So my question to Elaine is, and I think I know the answer, but I just want to ask, can we include projects that we ultimately want to have in our URA plan, but aren't currently in our, that the boundary isn't currently in the URA?
That's a great question. And I don't think you can. So if those two projects are really important, we may have to switch or figure out how to include them now, because you can't say you're going to spend money on something that's not in the boundary, even though you anticipate it being in the boundary in the future.
Sure.
And you could add that project in the future, but if you were adding that amount of money, like for the Y project in the future, you would have to delete that amount of money that's allocated to another project, or increase your maximum indebtedness at the same time you add in that property.
Okay, so that answer may kind of make our decisions for us then, if that's the case, because I don't know that. I guess my personal recommendation, my professional recommendation, is that Forest Creek Drive is not significant enough to warrant taking other areas out, and you know, so that project cost could come off of our list and get us to where we need to be. But again, want to hear from the committee and on your thoughts of whether or not there's something that should be on there or something that shouldn't be on there.
Justin has his hand up again.
Thank you, Justin.
Well, I'll just agree with you on that, on your thoughts regarding Forest Creek Drive. It seems like other projects are more significant in need or priority. You know, so if we're looking at it that way, I agree with you on that. And I just had another question on the Langer Farms Parkway extension. Is that going to just dead end, or is that supposed to connect potentially to like Roy Rogers?
It's currently envisioned to truly dead end. We've done a lot of analysis of that, and there's a really big, deep, wide ravine that we would have to cross to get to essentially Borchers and ultimately Roy Rogers.
Yep.
And it was fairly cost prohibitive, and the neighborhood to say they didn't like the idea is an understatement. So it is envisioned to dead end. That That said, that doesn't mean, 50 years down the road, we might not do something, but it's not currently envisioned to do anything else.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Definitely would kill the cost benefit.
Yes, definitely. And actually, John was consultant. We had a quick response grant from ODOT to help us analyze that, and he was actually working on that project, and so he could probably testify to that as well if he wanted to, but he doesn't have to. Any other comments or hands that I can't see? So Elaine, what? So I think we got great feedback. What happens next with this list?
I think the biggest number of feedback, the biggest project with the number associated to it was the why, and so I think we need maybe weigh in from anybody who strongly feels it shouldn't be taken off the list, because right now it looks like there's, the consideration from Cassandra and TBF&R that's something that they would like to see off the list. And so I think if other people are concerned about that coming off the list, they need to step in now or and let us know that.
Can't see anybody, but I'm not hearing anybody.
I can't see anybody either.
I don't see any hands.
All right.
I think silence is the answer.
Silence is the answer. So I think that with that coming off and us taking out the Forest Creek Drive, I think that we're pretty darn close. And like Elaine said, staff can finesse the numbers a little bit more. So I think we've got a good list. And so Elaine, do you want to kind of wrap us up?
Yes. So we have another advisory committee meeting January 13th, which actually means my sub-consultant and I have a lot of work to do to get you a finance plan and things together for that meeting. But we will do that. And at that meeting, then we'll look at this project list again and kind of look at impacts to taxing districts and how this project list looks over time. The Sherwood agency meeting is scheduled for March 2nd. So that gives us some time after that advisory committee meeting to actually write the documents, the plan and the report, and get things out to the agency to review a draft plan and report. So it's moving steadily ahead, but still has enough breathing room there between January 13th and March 2nd if we see any glitches at the January 13th meeting.
So the next slide is just questions.
So I have a question. Right in time. So I have a question that goes back to maybe I didn't listen enough at the very beginning of the meeting, but for Elaine, what do you need from the county and the other taxing districts? Do you need us to not oppose it? Do you need us to take an affirmative, we support because this is the creation of a new district, and I know we're working with you on a major amendment to districts where the legislature has been more clear. So I was going back and looking at the at the ORS to see, okay, what do we need to that? I thought, no, I'm just going to ask you.
And that's good, because reading ORS 457 can totally put you to sleep at night. You know, if you can't get to sleep, just pull that out. The way the statute's been interpreted is that the urban renewal plan has to be presented to the county. Okay. And we must tell you what the maximum indebtedness is, but that the county does not have any kind of approval process or need to adopt a resolution or do anything. Washington County before has proactively adopted support of different urban renewal plans that I've bought. So I've brought them to you, and they've said, well, we want to actively support, and have passed a motion to that effect. But that's totally up to you and doesn't have to be done. So
Elaine, though I believe that because part of the Tonkin employment area is not annexed into the city, that there is an action for the county.
Thank you.
But I can't remember what exactly it is.
You're right, and I keep forgetting that some of that is not annexed. So I'm very sorry, and thank you, Julia, for catching me. Because there's property that's outside of city limits, the county will have to approve the plan.
Okay, so thank you, because we've been through this. I've been through this several times, and I can never. It's always a little different each time.
Yeah,
but if a taxing district opposes it, then do they have any sort? You know, what happens if some taxing district, like the school district or TVF or somebody opposes it? What happens? Then they just say there's a course, right?
Yeah, legally, that doesn't stop the urban renewal plan from being. It obviously is a public perception issue if there's major opposition, and that's why we try to get people together up front to make sure if there are big problems with components of it that we vet those and resolve them. However, if Washington County doesn't adopt it, the areas that are outside cannot be included in the plan. So
no, I don't doubt that we will. We did this before for Hillsborough. We've done this, Wilsonville. We've done this before.
Right.
So the only other thing is you say March 2nd, you're having an agency meeting. It's going to sound crazy and bureaucratic, but I need to get this like months in advance on our board rolling agenda now. So should I peg April? What would be a good date?
April.
Okay.
Because it would end up going to city council probably in May. So you would want the prior approval from the other taxing district. So April would be great.
Okay, perfect. That's all I need. Thank you.
Then, Chris, can you let me know what that date is? Because I'm sure you're going to want someone to be there.
We will, Julia. We will. Thanks.
Tim, and then Cassandra.
Oh, a quick question, and I want to make sure we're addressing Cassandra's concerns about or public works type projects. If we were to do the public works building, that would require approval from, I think, what's the number 4 of the?
Three of the 4 top taxing jurisdictions.
Right. So, and we're, I know I'm sensitive to that, and the only other thing I would add is, we are always looking for other people's money, as we say all the time, and a lot of times when we have these projects identified, you never know what grant opportunities come up at the state or federal level. So there's a lot of opportunities to fund these in other manners, and we continue to pursue those.
And I will add, and maybe I'm wrong or off base here, but I think having it in the URA would demonstrate to people that we're applying for money for that we have the ability to leverage funds. And so I think having it in and on the plan may help us actually be more likely to leverage other people's money. And so just kind of putting that out there. So Cassandra, what did you want to add?
I'm actually going to raise the same item that Councilor Rosner did, that under the most recent legislative update to ORS 47, the public works facility would require concurrence of 3 of the 4. So thank you. That was all.
Any other questions? I'm curious, I haven't heard, Phil, I know you're there. Any thoughts or concerns or questions from the school district? Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, I think just rolling over that public works facility, as opposed to having it purely a city municipal bond project versus part of the URA, is something I've just been given a lot of thought to as the discussion went on. So that's all.
Thanks. Other questions, comments?
So let me just help clarify that public works building issue. at the point that we go through all of this, once the agency reviews it, we would then have to reach out to the top taxing districts and ask them to actually adopt a resolution approving that project and to be included in the plan. So we'll have to start preparing that information and touching base with those taxing districts. And typically those are the county, the city, DBFNR, and the school district. So I'll verify that and we'll move forward. And if they don't get that concurrence from what is required by statute, then it may not be included in the plan. Now the wastewater, the water quality facility, that's different. So it's just the Public Works building facility that would be the one that would hit that threshold.
Elaine, let me see if I understand something. So the taxing agencies would simply be looking at that specific project, not at the plan as a whole.
That's correct.
Okay, I get it. Okay.
So if we have, and Chris, I do see your hand, so I'm acknowledging that I see you. So if we have a list of projects that we think are solid and that are within that maximum indebtedness sidebars that we are targeting, and we don't get that support, can we then go back and add other projects, or does that just reduce our project number? Okay.
You could go back and add other projects that are within the urban renewal area. I think if this is the project list and we decide to move ahead, we probably would, I'll have to go back and look at the statute and see what all it says, but I think we would move as quickly as we can to working with the other taxing districts to see whether you could get that or not, so that as we develop the plan, we develop it with the right projects in it. So I'll have to, this process, as Cassandra said, is relatively new, so I'll have to go back and look and make sure what all the steps are and what has to precede any step.
Okay. Chris, oh, you're on mute.
That was my question, is about the sequencing, is how many so it sounds like we'll need to go first for permission, board action on this project, and you guys, I guess you'll probably sharpen your pencils and trying to figure out what the best way to do, so you can tell the story about why this is the best way to do it, and then we'll come back with a full project list for action. Okay.
I think so. I don't know for sure, but I will know very soon after I try to figure it all out.
Okay, just let us know. Thanks.
Yes.
And can I have a question on that, Elaine? If I heard you right, the vote of the taxing authorities to approve a public works project or building is separate from the approval of the URA?
That's correct.
Okay, so at any time, like 10 years from now, we decided we wanted to build a new library, we would have to go through that process with the taxing. I'm not saying that's on our agenda. I'm just making that up.
Right,
but,
that's correct.
Okay. So it wouldn't hold up the URA process. It's more about initiating a project.
That's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? This is a great conversation. I thank you all for just diving in so deeply and asking the questions and participating. It's wonderful. Other questions, because that's what makes us make sure we got a good product. Hearing none, I think that's all we had on the agenda, correct, Elaine and Bruce?
It is. It is.
All right.
So we have a lot of work to do before our January meeting, and we'll get at that. And we may send you out something, just a email update on this public buildings thing, so that once we figure out exactly the process, so that you all know what that will entail, so that it won't be just left hanging out there.
Okay, thanks. Thank you for a good discussion.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Julia, can you stay on the call?
Sure. All right, thank you all.
Well,
Thank you.